Testing. Hello. Okay, it sounds like it's coming through now. Can you guys hear me? That was so stupid. Hello. Hello. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Then the music's playing, right? And you can hear the game audio. Right? You can hear everything. Let's go. Oh my god. I don't understand what was going on there. Cool. It's working. Sick. Coconuts. You came in at a good time because I've been struggling with fucking technical difficulties. Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, gamers. Hello. Okay. Everything's working, as far as I can tell. Hopefully, there is no more problems. Hopefully. We love struggling. Yeah, totally. Now, is this too loud? I think that's too loud. Is that fine? Because I think that's okay for me. Here's no. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is gonna be too loud. Not the good ones. Okay. Let's see.
有铁鱼的帮助真好，看来我们还是有机会活着。我们部队的体育，我已连接至你的头盔抬头显示已更新进度，频道随时开启，供你需要时使用。
A little too hard to hear when I'm talking. Put on your one headphone, that's right. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, let me know if this is too loud. I'm just gonna play through this level and then we're gonna see. Just don't say anything important when go boom. Okay, gotcha. I mean, I can turn it down a bit more. Yeah, that's probably fine, right? Hopefully. Perfect, let's go. Oh look, just my two favorite speedrunners. Hi, Brady. Yeah, that's smart bites. Because like if it's just cable problems, you know, might as well just replace it, keep it as long as you can, right? Unless that like impacts your audio quality. Brady, are you excited to see Coconut run Dragon Age Inquisition max quests? You know, whenever he actually gets to doing that. Yeah, dude, same. I want more coconut streams in my life. Please. Pretty please. How much have you been derusting off camera? I was doing some stuff yesterday. Yeah, I did the races with bites. Otherwise, I've just like been practicing general movement. But I haven't. Yeah, no, I feel like it's definitely getting better, like way better too. Pretty close each race, hell yeah. But I haven't like checked some specific things, I guess. I went through super fastball like 2 times, 3 times. I'm gonna do that right now.
相信我。
Ooh. This is not what I was expecting. Whoa. Well, I mean, sure.
发现连线锁定模组，检查抬头显示。所有单位 K4 没有回应，准备进攻目标所在的信号台4号。C16，信号台4号构台上的小队已阵亡，铁玉可能是要从那里发送信号。收到，就位于信号台4号构台处，等待拦截。
Cool。
铁玉模组位于天线的投射器中。C16呼叫你赫特，铁玉的意图不明，他可能是要帮我们。
I should really learn the actual like fast way of doing this. No. No. Okay, whatever. No. So yeah, I definitely should practice this more. But right now that's not like too big of a concern as long as like I get through the whole thing, right? We can ignore this right now. We can ignore this. I'm gonna do this. This is also one of the reasons I wanted to turn up the audio a bit so I can hear the game more at the same time as I'm like listening to music, because I want to vibe with music while I'm doing this, you know, so. Nice. Cool, bye-bye. I'm going up. I'm gonna make a save before Viper, because I want to quickly have a look at what the actual strat is there. Oh. Nice.
6要登机了。马耳他的甲板上还有防空炮台在启用中，靠近前必须从剑桥解除炮台。交给我。库珀做得好。
掩护火力不赖，
有我罩你。布里格斯指挥官，我们也需要你的协助。
收到，贝尔，我来了。这座剑桥通过那边的停机坪，有点子吗？我是布里格斯，要我做什么？
关上门，保持平稳。他脑袋坏了。跟我来。他们在后面。这工作，永远不会腻。
移动不动，戴维斯。
登上马域。所有保护部队前往停机坪。同时代码，保护部队前往。
快走掩护。
Molly! I'm dead. Molly distracted me. Okay. Y'all heard it here first.
有点子吗？
Whoa!
我是布里格斯，要我做什么？
关上门，保持平稳。他脑袋坏了。跟我来。哎，这工作。他们在后，永远不会腻。
移动不动，戴维斯。
Oops. Shocked myself. How are you doing, Molly? How have you been, baby? Work was fine, just tired as hell. Well, that's one thing I should check right now. I do this. This controller. No, so this is okay. I guess my PS5 controller just doesn't work with Titanfall. Let me try my other one. Nothing. Okay. So, excuse me a bit. Guess I need to use my Xbox controller. And this cable is just like 10 miles long. You know, just how it be. But this is micro USB. Sad. Hold on, I have to plug it in on the back. Let's have one available on the front because that's being used by my mic. I don't have a free spot. I don't. This is. Under my monitor. Okay, cool. Go. Tangled my cables. Whoops. So do this then. Move those under. That works. Ah, this is super weird. I'm so used to using the PlayStation controller. I prefer using those. Oh my god. Oh. Why is that not jump? is this jump? Cool. Yeah, I'll just put this in default because I'm not gonna use that normally anyway. Cool, yeah, so... This...
继续掌控剑桥，使用电子刀在天龙星后方右转。巴克，将 BT 带回给库珀。
没问题，我来了。等一下，铁人。
所有飞行员除掉敌人，到天龙星汇合。就这样。
这是你的泰坦库珀，保姆任务完成了。
将控制权转交铁域。
库珀，我们从后方掩护你，到甲板上前去天龙星。
Okay. Let me go have a quick look at this Titanfall guides. Okay, let me just... What is this? Why is this audio not being picked up? What the fuck is going on with my audio thing today? Hello? But you're picking up the game? Yeah. But you're not picking up Chrome. Alright, whatever. Y'all are not gonna hear this. Okay. Mm-hmm. I wonder if I completely close Chrome and start it up again. Can you guys hear it then? No. Of course not. Okay. Dash twice. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so okay. Let me try that. So we have Ion. We have Ion. We shoot him twice. Switch to Tone. Shoot him 5 times. Once in the air, twice on the ground, and another 2 times in the air. Rockets. Switch to Expedition. Line up rockets. Release them once he like slows down in the air. That should take him down. Switch to Ronin. Core. Kill the 2 guys. Go to the front of the ship. Okay.
无毒液、毒蛇已就位，铁玉，你的旅程结束了。我掌握了太空，无路可跑，无处可躲。哪里攻击恶棍？
So Tone. Sure.
布里德斯指挥官，我是 BP7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙
Let's
机。
do that again.
无毒液、毒蛇已就位，铁玉，你的旅程结束了。我掌握了太空，无路可跑，无处可躲。哪里攻击恶棍？
Dude, what the fuck? Okay. Let's try that again.
无毒液、毒蛇已就位，铁玉，你的旅程结束了。我掌握了太空，无路可跑，
I save here.
可躲。
Hi, Glint.
哪里攻击恶棍？
Bro. Okay, I need to make sure I hit those shots.
哪里攻击恶棍？
My body's shutting down for sleeping too long. Okay. Good night. I'll miss you. I can't hit.
1号正在寻找引力，拉着4号进入目视范围，出动。
Oh my god.
哪里攻击恶棍？ 哪里攻击恶棍？
sure. It was bad. Dude, yeah, switch. It's not good. Boom, Ronin, core. Let's try that again. But he's not dead. You fucker. Sure. It's not as good as I want it to be. I need to be able to hit these shots. But you get out of my way. Why? Not good. Expedition. Yeah. Is it like a range thing? Do I have to be closer? I just can't hit my shots. No. What do you do there, Try?
蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护圣柜，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。正在调整风阻，
Do the ion
计
strat.
算中。
Going for the scorches and then iron clear. Okay. Do the iron butt. Me too. Yeah, because okay. Because what Bladen does starts with iron. Viper's Stir gets hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the gold on is bro. I want to do it. You bitch. Hold on, I need more space for my mouse here. Need to shoot faster because it's gonna land before. And I can't shoot that close because then it's gonna always put up a shield and eat everything. So I need to. There I didn't hit. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Hold on. Excuse me.
It's
probably not fast enough.
毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护盛会，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。正在调整风阻，计算中。
Guess we'll find out. I don't think so. Okay, well. I mean, basically, if I'd been a bit faster, yeah, then yeah, I would have done it. So. Dash. And 5 times. Boom, 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 boom. I need to wait. Man. God. Why is it so hard? Get soft locked. Okay, I see. Cool. Ronin, core. Go very fast or not at all.
毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护盛会，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。正在调整风阻，计算中。
All right, cause see now I'm out of bounds. I'm in bounds. Okay. So I mean that was fine. Yeah, this has to be a range thing, right? Is there a max range on the whatever it's called? I guess, yeah, because it's dash twice, shoot. Ideally, I'd hit him once in the air, but I'm not gonna do that. There we go. Ugh. Just die. Four.
布里格斯指挥官，我是 BT7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护圣柜，我们会准备好移动。
Bob.
我要扔了。正在调整风阻，计算
Bob.
中。
The Slayer. One. Hello. How's it going, baby? Okay. I wanna try and at least make it out of bounds like once, right? So I kind of like know how. I mean, I understand it in concept. Cool. Expedition. Oh.
布里格斯指挥官，我是 BT7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护圣柜，我们会准备好移动。
复活，我要扔了。
Ooh, boy. Okay.
正在调整风阻，计算中。
Okay. Let's try that again.
我是 BT7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护圣柜，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。正在调整风阻，计算中。
Okay. Well. Because what is it? You come over here. And then... you have to, like, mantle this?
库珀，瞄准驾驶舱，快开火！
BT was destroyed. Oh no. Damn it. Sure, running.
布里格斯指挥官，我是 BT7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护盛会，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。正在调整风阻，计算中。
Okay. Well, I mean, whatever. I feel decently comfortable with it right now, so I'm like, okay. I mean, I'll just do it in a run and then, you know, see how it goes. Right? So. Do. Okay. Okay. Do I just full send a full run try? What do you think? Just see how it goes. Do it. Bet. Fuck it, we ball. Yeah, exactly. Hold on though. Let me open my energy drink. Okay. I will compare against latest run actually, since that was the last one we did. So had to do a double take. Because of Alice, I also say fuck it, we ball now every now and then. So. Okay. Cool. Go. Fuck it, we ball.
步枪兵库珀，我们走吧。该死，船上的模拟舱一定重启过了，我们得重新设定。觉得这样可以吗，库珀
yeah.
好了，我们走，我们看看你记得多少。设定神经连线，和泰坦连线类似，但不一样。学新技能得有正确的心态。啊，好多了。加快动作，开启跳跃装备辅助。跳跃装备以自然稳定的原则运作，校准你的跳跃装备及移动方式，经过强化后会像直觉反应一样自然。好，这才像样。 简单的2连跳，跟着换一。
Oh, cool.
以后，我们夺回了1/4的边界，反抗军越来越有规模，每年
No.
多像你一样的人加入来对抗 IS。
Damn it.
瞬息万变，
Whatever.
填装弹药，
Dude.
很好，你可以继续练习，结束后至试炼室。很好，今天有个新试炼，跟着幻影或另行路径。
Okay. Ah.
铁玉在战斗中必须保持平衡，速度很重要，但你也得能够击中你的目标。我们得练习这些技能，直到成为直觉反应。
Okay. Okay.
非常好，看到墙上的评分板了吗？后，我有东西要让你看看。练习都结束了。
来吧，我准备好了。
很好，你会喜欢这个，可以开始后半段训练。泰坦，开一架进来吧。
Think this is V. Yeah.
我准备好了。
这就对了，但首先需要更多空间。BT， 那是我的搭档，先锋级，反抗军自行研发，自行设计的泰坦，不是向 IMC 偷来的。呼叫你的第1架泰坦吧。看上面，天上，来了。 好了，步枪兵，看来有大事要发生。
We have to go. Low power. We have to go. No.
别急，克罗，他刚离开虚拟实境，需要点时间适应。他没问题的，相信我。
是长官。
全体就战斗位置，这不是演习。
注意了，他们杀过来，他们想要杀过来。训练的还不错，有一天你会熟练它。我们会把你训练成铁玉的步枪兵，不是今天，没时间了。
拉斯提摩沙，
安德森，
你这畜生！我们下面见。
今天会看到一颗新的星球，说不定就死在那里了。下面见了，库珀，祝你好运。
快滚出那个模拟仓库珀，运输机上碰头。
Yep. We're going. Cool. Still faster than my latest run. I mean, I'm gonna take it, so. Oh. When are we racing again? Try to do that again at some point. God. What do you mean? Don't even play Titanfall anymore, Sag. No. Turning heads, I got so many skydogs. got so burnt out. No, that's understandable. Like last time, you know, I did any percent. Last time I actually like ran it a lot was, you know, in 2020. And I just like burned myself out on both like streaming and speedrunning this game then, so no. No. Dude. Okay, whatever. Damn it. Okay. Also, my partner second place in the worst. Sometimes. You're cute, try. No. Sure.
电力不足，电力2/3，资料核心重新初始化。
Okay.
系统启动，调整焦距中，你还好吗，铁玉？我的系统正在重启，有3个电池将会加速程序，我会在这里等待。
东卫，你有多了解库本部理？听说他以前在 IMC 部队。
在我能行动之前，我会透过头盔无线电协助你。铁玉，地图系统已重启，反抗军第9舰队发动突袭，我们大幅偏离原定目的地。
Fucking plants. Fucking ah. Sure. I mean, I'll take it, but
我们的位置已暴露。 最后的电池，能量全开。铁玉必须先建立神经连结才能继续。准备完请登机。
Do you have to get a 122 one day though? Because of his dream that you did. Yeah, you got this. You got this. How's Alice doing? Is she still on? I'm assuming she's still on the boss, right?
神经连线完成。步枪兵杰克库珀，你现在确认是 BT7274的代理铁玉。
Yeah.
协议2，坚守任务，命令是要继续特殊作业217，跟安德森少校会合。我侦测到敌方部队来袭。协议3，保护铁玉，重启主要系统。涡旋防护罩启动，涡旋防护罩能捕捉射过来的子弹与炮弹，释放按钮能将所有捕捉到的物品射向敌人。 铁玉，助手舱启动了。这个监射型火箭舱可同步锁定多个敌军目标，按钮按下越久，可锁定的目标越多。神经连线完成，主武器控制与动作连线已重新建立。 侦测到敌方泰坦，我们准备杀出一条血路吧。
你确定吗？
相信我。
发现三钢军泰坦，机身号码 BT7274，遭受攻击。
敌方泰坦倒地，做得好，我们的战斗效率评分增加了。铁玉。 我侦测到有更多 IMC 回收队在路上，我们要生存的唯一机会是完成跟安德森少校会合的任务。在那之前，我们得靠自己。标记抬头显示
No. Okay. A bit there.
我们必须动作快。
Still faster than latest run, so that's good. Kind of nice running against that. I can see how much I've improved since the last one. Let me... I want to pull up Alice on the side so I can see how she's doing. Even though it's going to be garbage quality that I'm going to be having it on, but that's fine. Cool. Okay, we ready.
铁玉 ，IMC 会继续寻找我们。我们生存的唯一机会是与安德森少校在离这里60公里处会合。我们要生存，就得懂得应变和适应。
这里是带球32，我们伤亡惨重，有没有反抗军的部队？请帮帮忙！
那是友方先锋级泰坦，
我们损失惨重，那是 BT 吗？
How long do you think it's going to take her to try? I think her timer is going to reach 100 hours before she's done.
上哪去啊？
这个泰坦武器的设计很先进，对我们有
Cause
战
you
术
bet.
上的优势。
Mistake.
我们可以用强硬的装备锁定敌人，发射追踪导弹标记他们，这对战斗很有帮助。
回消辐射启动，开启流量调节门。警告：毒物已扩散至大厅，启动安全气压过渡舱程序。
Oh, but that's a mood. I was thinking I was going to bet as well, and then I forgot to spend channel points. I forgot to do it. I don't know where that guy is.
我正在攻击敌方泰坦。
这是浣熊3号，地球反抗军舰队，我们死守
Nope.
开垦设施。MT 有某种新式的机械步兵，我们被困住了。政委，
我已在你的行进路径上侦测到反抗军友军，他们也许需要协助。
是时候了。
警告：有毒动物可能造成生害或是死亡，在此设施内请随时佩戴好。有毒海放雾方，正在过滤自动测试。
我听说有些先锋级泰坦和 SRS 铁狱在袭杀我们
Damn it.
不管你是谁。不
警
错，
告：3该区有猎兽。
Hello, please.
希望你比我上一次干掉的那个强。
海放雾方正在过滤自动测试设施。
铁玉，小心行事。铁玉，我们的道路将在前方交汇。铁玉，流量调节门挡住我们通过这个设施的路
开始想我了吗？
附近我不是对你开枪射击，这会违反协议3。
当我没说。
发现铁狱里有设计。
李婷，好久不见。
正好相反，你的头盔能提供我你的即时影像。你在那里打得不错，铁玉。关闭烂泥流的控制器，在下个房间里。你的抬头显示有标记。
将控制转给铁玉。
关闭功能。
Okay.
协议2，坚守任务。命令是要继续特殊作业217，跟安德森少校会合。
Coconut. Hello. Pecking cutie.
你可没被邀请来肯恩的派对，
Hi.
好好，真好，有一个落跑英雄。
What are you up
还带
to
着一
for
地
the day?
SRS 先锋级
Butt spot. How could you butt
哇哦
spot?
这才像话嘛！那场真刀真枪的对战吧。废物，让好戏上场吧。很高兴能夺走你的泰坦妹。
别碰到你战机，对机身会造成致命伤害。
不错不错，像是可能在回击，这样真不少。
Chill time. Let's go.
肯恩的头盔无线电会遭破坏，我建议你回收它。
泰坦和铁狱正在强行进入设施。
Oh. Yeah, I don't know what these splits are, but they're definitely not like whatever I had in my PB, so
该怎么处置他们？
杀了他们。
马上到，顺龙完毕。
解密敌方通讯的能力在战争史中有着重要的地位，这将对我们有利。要生存就得继续前进。
nice. Music popping, hell yeah. You want to go fast, then go
安德森
fast.
少校走的是这条路，他可能是到汇合点的捷径。
Go faster, Coconut.
继续
Go
前进，
faster.
小心前进。
来去，我是布里斯克，收到没？完毕。
我是艾雪，说吧。
肯恩没回复，我看这反抗军的铁玉想当大英雄，他朝着你那里去了，干掉他。
了解。
I'm bringing it back to simpler times. Fucking mood. didn't need to do that.
控制转给铁玉，
直接命中。早就生产进攻准备到了。
告，方太太到底做得好，铁玉，你的技术真是进步神速。铁玉，这码头的货梯是条捷径，看看你的抬头显示就能找到控制台。
货梯已启动。
铁玉，我需要协助。
警告！警告
Ooh.
！13号码头发现未授权泰坦，向泰坦移至资产处置处。
我正在攻击敌方步兵。
已确认安全漏洞位置。
No gold, Sag. I love your nodders emote. Coconut, it's so good.
铁玉，铁玉，我需要协助。
看来自动保全发现了泰坦，真省事。
铁玉，库珀，如果你听到的话，我正被带往这个设施的变电站。
You just like you. Oh my god, because it is you. No way.
我看到
I know, right?
到处都是 IMC 步兵。
Imagine.
这是马文机器人的工作，而不是步兵。
说的没错，兄弟，相信太不适合这份悲。
Spitfire.
布里斯特，我是艾许，我捉到了先锋级泰坦，你想要我怎么处理他？
我他妈的不在乎，毁了他吧。他的铁玉呢？
我们会对付他。这个设施本来就是为杀戮而造，我确定在必要时，我可以利用这一点。
艾许，那不是你的游乐园，我付钱可不是要你耍小聪明的，必要时就把那地方毁掉，懂吧？
哦
通话完毕。
Jesus.
铁玉，我正被他沿着装配线往下带走，可能有共通出口，建议你沿着平台的动线走。铁玉，这设施十分危险，小心生产线上的机械。
That looked sick, yeah. But I thought I was gonna die to the fucking grinder. Dude, I did not get the speed I needed because I'm a dingus. Why am I back here?
我正被他沿着装配线往下带走，可能有共通出口，建议你沿着平台的动线走。铁玉，这设施十分危险，小心生产线上的机械。
他在平台上。
Okay, let's not fuck it up this time. Mirror's Edge checkpoints are fucking brutal. How are you enjoying the speedrun though?
铁玉，铁玉，你还好吗？
Yeah. Price had like a singular stream. As far as I know. Stream, you should do more. You should do more. Please, please, pretty please.
看到你的
哦。
我很佩服你的毅力。要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。
That was too late.
要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。
Was that too early? Or was that too late as well? I can't tell. It's been so long. Early, yeah. I used my double jump.
要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。
Oh my god.
要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。
Dude! Please!
要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路
What is the timing?
往上。
Too early.
都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。 要是阿这些步兵都像你这样放弃牺牲就好了。田月出去的路只有一条，往上。
I don't understand how I'm early. I don't remember like the visual cue for when to jump at all. It's like gone. Cause like, see, I feel like I'm jumping way too late in actuality, as far as I remember, but I guess not. What's the visual cue again, try? Because I clearly don't remember it. When it fully leaves the screen. Cool.
铁玉，扫描显示圆顶上方是你最佳的出路，我建议你想尽办法也要上去。
Yeah, because I don't even remember where I'm supposed to stand. That sucks. Losing so much time to this, as well as dying on a stupid level. Oh well. Well, because I'm, you know, this is not something I've looked at in a long time, right? I haven't looked it up in a long time. Because I just kind of try and go off of muscle memory, but it's probably that I'm lining up wrong. Like I'm standing in the wrong spot kind of deal, you know? Dude, the fact that I've spent almost 10 minutes on this level is disgusting. The fact that I have spent 10 minutes on this level is disgusting. Ugh.
于动态模拟圆顶314中载入情境127。
现在，让我们瞧瞧你到底有什么本事。
Hi, Harold. Hello.
艾雪，告诉我你杀了那个铁玉。
我正在处理它。
别玩了。
我就不能享受我的工作吗？
不行，你得尽快处理。
了解了，艾雪完毕。
别担心，有了干掉他后的奖金，你就可以去买所有你想要的玩具了。第4区 Charlie 负责21到29号的引爆。
所有 IMC 人员，我是艾雪。告诉你们个坏消息。
体育，我不知道你做了什么，在一连串的爆炸让机械手臂放松了，我已脱困，这地方要崩塌了，建议我们尽快离开。你离我的位置不远，抬头显示有标记。
Oh my god. Please. Gross. Okay, so clearly, I need to figure out the lineup again in Abyss 2. Need to figure that out. Because the moment I get that back, and I get it always, then it's basically 4 minutes time save compared to like the time I spent here. Yeah, no, I haven't streamed in a while for sure. Oh no! Rip. No! Rip. Not what I wanted to do. I'm messing up everything. Dude, why do these fuckers have collision? Yeah, no, I haven't really been consistent with streaming at all, and it's something that I want to like get back to doing, right? It's just I've had the like I want to stream, but I don't know what I want to stream moment, right? So then I end up just not streaming. So then now I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna stream, and then you know I watched Bites like do Titanfall, which made me really like want to get back into it. And so here I am. Have you considered becoming a hot tub streamer? Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another problem too. It's like I don't really have the time, kinda ish, because work, like, well, I do, but then work, you know, drains me of energy, right? So, and then there was also other stuff that I want to do outside of just streaming, but then I was like, okay, you know what? What if I just combine it? So this Saturday, for anyone here that doesn't know, I want to work in game dev. And so I have been teaching myself a bit, but I haven't actually like made any projects, right? So I was thinking, okay, what if I just like stream the process, right? Like make smaller games. We're talking probably, realistically, probably like 5 to 15 minute long, you know, games, right? Just to have made something. And so we're gonna begin, we're gonna like make the concept on Saturday, and then the goal is for me to do that like at least every Saturday, right? Maybe more, you know, who knows how much I'm feeling up for it. But I think that could be cool, and then I can get to make that into devlog videos that I can put on YouTube as well. I feel like it's just gonna be like one of those things where it's gonna help to keep me accountable to actually like push through with it, because it is something that I want to do, right? So
铁玉，给我他的头盔就可以分析。安德森死后，特殊
Thank
作
you,
业
Try.
217的控制权就转移给你了。库珀铁玉，恭喜你获得擢升。以下为反抗军 SRS 的布里格斯指挥官所简报的安德森
believe in your general direction. Yeah, so I've picked out some different themes, basically just taking them from different game jams and stuff. Hi, Magnus. What are you doing up at this hour? So I basically picked out some different themes, right? We're probably gonna either draw them like in a like randomly pick them, or gonna have chat vote on a few of them, and then like we're gonna come up with an idea around that theme, make a small game. You go through that process. Yeah, no, it's late over here too, you're right.
我们有责任坚守并完成特殊作业217。建议我们在继续前，先找到安德森的晚带装置。
我们应该怎么办？
我们的任务已更新。我侦测到安全守卫建筑上有个洞口，我会提供进入的权限。在你调查设施已取得情报和丢失装置时，我会待在这里。
Really? Why do you want to move here?
一定有比较简单的方法 ，PT。
我会想办法。
It's cool. It would be awesome to see you. But why? Why to no man's land? Damn. Kind of far. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, if you are moving here, let me know so we can meet up. Go eat sushi or something. I would actually be so offended if you did.
换时就可以通讯。
胜利拦截点。镭射网一启动。
Be a regular at your store and never know. That's true. I wouldn't, because I haven't seen you. Well, if you're gonna come pick up packages at us, if I suddenly see that there is someone named Magnus that I give a lot of packages to, I'm just gonna assume it's you.
铁玉，安德森的受损日志可能有些用处。开始播放日志。
Because as far I don't recall anyone with that name having picked up packages with us, at least not while I've delivered them. True. Not minus. Imagine.
现在不测试圣柜的力量，以后可能就没机会了。俘虏6号，准备传递圣柜。安德森342，折叠时空武器的能源叫做圣柜。看到目标了，看到没？完整并不发现。看来他们还没研发出完美无缺的外壳。这个已经空了，圣柜一定在别的地方。
Bro. Just a bit too soon. And of course it sends me back here. Watched any of GDQ yet? I watched a bit here and there. I also commentated a run. Yeah, that checkpoint was horrible. Try. Ooh. I did pilot challenge. I've done this level actually a lot. I don't understand like why all of that suddenly just left my body. I don't remember the time. I am horrible at remembering times, Try, and you should know this. But you can look it up. Jesus.
这里的轮环有大量残存的圣柜能量，这是圣柜的终点站。安德森的计划中有一件靠近轮环中心的侦察任务。
The game has like random stutters, which sucks. Okay, sick. $10.46. Try. 10.46.
建议到轮环附近跟我汇合，并扫描圣柜的能量特征。我找到桥梁延伸至轮环的操控台，抬头显示有标记。
旅馆安全协议，马上开始测试。
你似乎曾做过些什么？
But yeah, let me know, Magnus. whenever you're showing up here. I don't know if you're a sushi person or not, but I'm taking you out to sushi. Okay, thank you. I didn't look for your name.
BT，
Not made of raw fish, sadly. What do you mean? But yeah, no. Be prepared if you are moving here. To be prepared. There is nothing to do here. There's nothing to do here. It takes you 10 minutes to walk through the town. And then if you like to go out drinking, I hope you enjoy hanging with like 60-year-olds. Yeah, no, it's boring. Not for me. Like a slope with some buildings, yeah, pretty much.
我们的旅程离结束还早呢，必须将这数据回传舰队。
Oh. With butts to do.
库珀铁狱，安德森死了，但只要能和舰队重新连线，我们就能完成他的任务。前方的星际信号台刚好派上用场。
No.
铁狱，信号台就在前方。
Also, Magnus, any idea how soon we're talking? I don't know why the game's stuttering so much either.
发现敌人，这些潜行者似乎被输入指令攻击控制室。
Oh.
注意，敌人已消灭，做得好！这场胜利是我们良好战斗效率的表现。铁狱，我发现信号 BT7274呼叫反抗军部队，敌人已被消灭。
你救了我们一命，那些潜行者。
I mean, it began happening after I opened up Alice's stream, so clearly she must be sabotaging me, right?
进来吧，我是反抗军手榴弹兵第3部队的克里上尉，我们现在跟泰坦在连接上，被敌方严重，带他们上去。
我建议我们协助消灭那些潜行者。 并与反抗军部
Cool, Magnus, let me know.
信号台状况如何？
电源已关闭，我们没办法控制它，必须有像这样的东西才能重新启动它。不过这个已经坏了。
名称：电弧装置，功能：产生高达5兆焦耳的能量。
是，我们知道那是什么。
你能修吗？
没办法，干仪器显示分台上还有一个，但是要过去是难上加难，那地方根本不是人为所建的。
了解了，库珀铁狱。我建议在设施分台里面行动时小心一点。你必须取回电弧装置。
他们建设这个地方的时候，没想到会有人来操作。
祝你好运。
祝你一路平安，长官。
I think you may be very lonely on the list of pros. Huh? I'm confused. Oh my god, it's Crisis! Hi! How are you doing? On the list of pros and cons, think you may be very lonely. No, I still think I'm confused. I don't know why. You're doing good. That's good to hear.
别怕，你的跳跃装备撑得住，电弧装置距离30公尺。做得好，体育，你已获得电弧装置，返回控制室，系统已准备重启。
Ah, I see. Okay, now I get it. Yeah, no, it's yeah, so you see, Magnus, I'm planning on moving out after, like, either during or after the summer. I'm gonna move down to Hönefoss. Move in with my best friend there. And we're gonna go back to school. Because I don't have generell studiekompetanse. And it turns out the school I want to go to requires that. So, I'm like, okay, fine, I guess. I don't remember the name right now, but it's a game dev school in Sweden where, like, of everyone that graduate, like 80% of them get a job, like, within the year after, right? So I really want to go to it, but it requires hi Bubkin, but it requires yeah, the generell studiekompetanse, right? So which is kind of dumb. It means I have to take like 100 hours of Norwegian classes to go to school in Sweden to do English classes. Like, why? But okay, so the only ones that I need Norwegian classes, I need math, I need history, and science. Those are the only ones I'm missing. And like history and science is gonna be easy. Never had a problem with those. Math is okay, I guess. It's just practical math that I need to take. And then yeah, Norwegian. Yeah, all normal, yeah. Because I went to vocational school, Crisis. So I never got like the baseline thing, I guess. But yeah, no, if you move here, Magnus, let me know, and we'll have a hell of a time. How's Bloodshot doing, Crisis? I know they're also getting into game dev stuff, right?
做得好，富国铁玉，现在能够启动电力供信号台运作。
Hell yeah, that's exciting to hear.
很高兴见到你回来，长官。正好湖面将整个电路重新配置完了，现在就差电源。
铁玉，电源室的继电器都已关闭。
I hope it gets in somewhere.
装置应该就能够手动发动它们。
铁玉，希望这电弧装置。
All the cuties doing game dev stuff out here. Listen.
高辐射含量，你的防护衣在房间内只能保护你一段时间。我建议你动作。
But it was required to move to Texas. Ah.
我可不会在里面待太久。好，我一倒数完就会打开闸门。3、2。
That's not something y'all are willing to do, I'm assuming. Trying out for like a remote position or something first.
电力达到100%，我建议你迅速离开此房间。
做得好，体育。电力好了，有电源了。打开防护闸，我们去修复信号台。创业开启中。
诊断完毕，电力100%。
开始重启天线锁定。
Could do well. Yeah, 100%. 100%. If it's gonna make him happy, you know, just go for it, right?
上尉，连线锁定模组已关闭。
该死的 IMC 发成阵朝是这
Oh, that's cool.
非常有可能。
Yeah, no, that is awesome.
没办法，长官，除非你想向整个 IMC 舰队进行广播。
我们得手动修复这模组。
铁玉，看来又得靠你了。
希望你不介意再冒一次险，铁玉。你得到现场。
I really do wish him the best of luck then. I really hope he gets in. That would be awesome.
小心了，我们今天已经在那里失去够多好兄弟。
Yeah.
扫描显示阵亡铁玉，我记得这名铁玉在摧残之地行动中表现非常出色。
Let him for a year. No. Because when did you guys move into the house? I don't remember when that
我
was.
的扫描器发现了运作中的连线锁定模组，东北方428
Just 2 years ago.
我的分析
Been 2
结果
years
显示
already?
投掷是唯一的办法，我能够将你扔过去。
Fuck. What? Dude, that's wild.
风力3节，风向274，距
That
离95
oh
公尺，
my god.
投掷质量89公斤。相信我。
IMC 运输船正朝着你过来。
Oh! That stutter almost fucked me up like real bad.
A14，我们正在调动部队协助，预计3分钟抵达。
那体育潜入信号台，干掉他全靠你了，布里斯克，传命。
K14，发现敌方铁玉，正朝你方向前进，请回复。
Oh my god, that stutter! Why?
K1，进军 A2，快让士兵着陆，快点 K14，收到没？回答我 K14。 K1，进军 A2，快让士兵着陆，快点 K14，收到没？回答我 K14。 所有单位 K14没有回应，准备进攻目标所在的信号台4号。敌方铁玉，撤退。收到，就位于信号台4号购台处，等待拦截。部署前行者。
发现连线锁定模组，检查抬头显示。
416，信号台4号购台上的小队已阵亡，铁玉可能是要从那里发送信号。
Sure.
416呼叫里赫特，铁玉的意图不明，他可能是要把我们调离泰坦。
哎，盯着铁玉，泰坦那边。
Oh, I don't have a double jump. We're doing. You're totally fine, Bumpkin. You're fine. Why? Dude. This run, man, it's cursed.
进军 A2，快让士兵着陆，快点 K14，收到没？回答我 K14，敌方铁玉，撤退。部署前行者，所有单位 K14没有回应。
I don't know, Bumpkin, but
收到，就位于信号台4号购台处，等待拦截。
发现连线
great
锁定模
checkpoint,
组
yeah.
检查抬头显示。
Amazing.
416，信号台4号购台上的小队已阵亡，铁玉可能是要从那里发送信号。
And guess what?
416呼叫里赫特，
I'm gonna get the exact same checkpoint.
把我们调离泰坦。K1，进军 A2，快让士兵着陆，快点 K14，收到没？回答我 K14，敌方铁玉，撤退。部署前行者，所有单位 K14没有回应，准备进攻目标所在的信号台4号。收到，就位于信号台4号购台处，等待拦截。
发现连线锁定模组，检查抬头显示。
416，信号台4号购台上的小队已阵亡，铁玉可能是要从那里发送信号。416呼叫里赫
调离泰坦。
铁玉，模组位于天线的投射器中。
9，盯着铁玉，泰坦那边我另有打算。
That's good, Bumpkin. Yeah, you deserve happiness too.
模组连接中断。
协议2，任务更新，获得连线。
It's one of those things that I'm like,
回来，库珀。
注意进入维修
you know,
模式
I'd rather like just focus on being happy, right? Because it's like I don't have time for like being like miserable, stuck in like a terrible place kind of deal, you know? So I'm like where I live right now. There is nothing for me to do. Like,
反泰坦小队已抵达。
you know, there is no queer culture here at all. There is like a few people here and there, but then it's like, you know, it's nothing good.
发射滑索，赶快！
Okay.
我正在攻击敌方部。
欢迎回来，库珀。我建议先保护此区域，再进行维修，目标消灭。已启动铁域控制。死神击毁。好想法。前行者击毁。
That's good though. Like you need to like like realize things about yourself and like what your values are and all of that, right? Even though like it can take some time. And that's also fine. As long as you like make sure that you prioritize yourself, right?
我正在攻击敌方步兵。已歼灭所有敌人，区域安全。没事吧，铁玉？
勉强，这是场硬仗。
I don't remember if I'm supposed to choose the
本上报
dialogue
告
here.
关键系统运作正常，除了你的自我评价。
I don't think so.
拉斯迪莫沙上尉一定会以你为荣，库珀。
谢了。
Fuck other people, prioritize yourself. Yeah.
协议2，任务更新，替换连线模组。
Why not both?
连线上方，我将你扔上去后，你再接着爬上去。
I'm gonna be so behind on these. That's fine. It's derusting, getting used to it again, you know, so.
体育，天线已启动，一回来我就上舰队发送信号。你实在是了不起啊，长官！
李科特，我是布里斯克。呀，我在路上了。李科特完毕。我是李科特，南捷并终结那个铁域，然后将剩下的反抗军处决。
死神接近中。部队，封锁控制室，发现敌人。
收到，封锁中，我们会在这里提供支援。
注意，发现异常活动，可能是敌方泰坦。
MC 听着，
That's not good.
只要生人军血，也想取人性命，自己做选择。Yes, mark in fair team。
抱歉，你过不了我这关。
别让他活着离开！你们统统都该死！
there you are. Crisis, do you have any goals that you're working towards? Or in general. Don't know what to do things you want to do. Understandable. Very understandable.
协议2，坚守任务，回报情报给隶属 SRS 单位的舰队。
清楚收到。
Yeah.
很高兴听到你们还在下面，我们现在正在接收资料。
No, I get that. Yeah, you know, just like me time is important time. You shouldn't cut down on me time.
正确，泰拉斯提摩沙上尉已阵亡。现在连线到的是代理铁狱步枪兵杰克库珀。
等一下，拉斯提摩沙要你连线步枪
One
兵。
thing that
他没有别的选择。
I'm trying to actively like work towards is like
反对。
there are many things that I want to do, right? But I don't have like the self-discipline to actually like stick through with it. I can suddenly be like hyper focused on it for like a month, right? And then after that I just don't have the discipline to like keep doing it. So that's something I'm trying to work on as well, just like making sure that okay, I don't need to push everything I have into it immediately, just like try and like, you know, sustain it, do it over time, spread it out. Yeah, but this year, Crisis, you're gonna have a lot of me time.
听着 ，IMC 研发一种折叠时空武器，它的威力能够摧毁整座星球，但如果没了它的能源盛会，它就没办法运作。你们必须
Being able to tell other people to fuck off is so relatable. It's a goal.
武器就绪，等待泰坦降落。
Dude, I'm just so ready to be done working with customer service. I'm like, please. Just need to last like a couple more months. And then hopefully I'm going to... Jesus, the damage. Oh, it's because it's this one. I was holding the wrong thing. 2015 is our year.
需要更换电池。
Okay, whatever. Come on, Sarah.
跟我来，前面有个电梯。
I'm going on longer walks to cover because he deserves it too. I'm trying 3 full water bottles. Yeah.
简单的部分结束
So
了。
proud of us starting. Hell yeah. Let's go.
复活表现不错，我认为你可以拿到。
We're gonna be so gay. No one will stop us. Exactly.
赶快
No, just
然后
not
回家
tall enough.
他在那里，时间还够，可以拦截盛会。上，敌军来袭！艾文从东方来袭，继续向前推进，不能让盛会离开那艘船。射得好，继续前进，我们正在接近天龙星，继续前进。所有反抗军部队进入天龙星。
发现先锋级泰坦。
天龙星快加满油了，快！护卫机到了，我们直接复活。
最后检查完成，所有系统正常。
他们要走了，我们得拿下那艘船，别让他们逃了，到那边的坡道。
Uh,
布里斯克，这是史龙，圣柜朝你那去了，我让毒蛇接手了，待会儿见。
上船，立刻就
cool. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'll post. I think I'll make. But it's a bop. It's.
我是布里格斯指挥官。
Can I read it?
必须取回盛会。IMC 带着他前往天龙星的折叠时空武器。
It says
全舰
Colossus
迅速地击溃他们。布里格斯完
by Sir Khan.
立刻前往。我们来了！我是坎贝尔的布雷斯特上尉，我们将提供支援平台。
发现敌方
But yeah, no, this Saturday,
锁定攻击成功。教训他们。
I'm gonna start on my game dev stuff. I have made a YouTube channel for my dev stuff as well. I think the link would be youtube.com/
我们必须赶上天龙星。
at lemdev. I think it's in the links channel in my Discord, at least.
有谁看清楚？
So on Saturday, we're gonna start with that. I've selected some themes, a few different ones. I basically just picked them from game jams, and we're gonna either randomly pick one or have chat vote on it on Saturday, and then we're gonna like come up with the concept. Thank you, Coconut. We're gonna come up with the concepts on Saturday. So the goal is, I want to figure out general concept about the game, one core mechanic to keep the scope limited. Follow them on GitHub. And
中方向防守天龙星，无法通过。复活。
yeah, to keep the scope limited so that I can actually realistically finish it.
指挥官，我是黑鸟64，我们可以到他那里。米铁，跟我们上去。
Ooh.
复活，发
This is not good.
马耳他战舰在10点钟方向防守天龙星，无法通过。库珀，我需要。
Yeah, I'll be sure to reach out. Does Bloodshot work in Unreal or Unity?
我是黑鸟64，我们可以到他那里。BT，跟我们上去。
收到64。
Yeah, I'll most likely be working in Unreal. Because of the modding experience I have with It Takes Two and stuff, I'm the most familiar with that.
我需要一位铁玉登上马耳他防守甲板。
弗里格斯指挥官，我是黑鸟64，我们可以到他那里。BT，跟我们上去。
收到64。
Woo. So, I mean, yeah, different languages, right? I would be working in C++, whereas Bloodshot is doing C#.
会跟你放假，然后自己想办法了。
目标左方。
库珀，跳得好！库珀，我们会从这里。
前行者，我出动了，掩护我。
But for sure, I'll reach out if I ever need to. I mean, I might like work in Unity at some point as well. Like, I'll basically just have to see.
再想办法。再这样下，库珀正前往马耳他的主炮阵地。
Hell yeah.
可不可行？
库珀，快点！
Cause okay, so what I did, right? I DM'd Oliver Granlund on Twitter, the game design lead at Hazelight, asking for like tips or suggestions for like what like he would recommend for how to get into the game dev stuff, right?
3号枪炮一。
And he was super kind. He responded with paragraphs and paragraphs with like information and stuff. Super kind. He didn't have to go so in depth.
靠近前，需从剑桥解除炮台。
And which is also one of the reasons I kind of want to work with Unreal, because working, like, if I ever had the opportunity to work at Hazelight, that would be super cool. And that's definitely like one of my goals there, right? It's a Swedish company, it's not too far off. I know that I'd have to move to Sweden if I want to get a game dev job, unless, you know, I just want to be indie. Which is fine too, it's just, you know, build up experience on someone else's cost, you know? If that makes sense. Like, learn stuff actively elsewhere. So that's also one of the reasons I want to work with Unreal, because Hazelight works with Unreal. Hazelight also has a custom scripting language called AngelScript, which I'm familiar with at this point because of It Takes Two modding. Hazelight. Haze, H-A-Z-E-L-I-G-H-T. The developers of It Takes Two. Might be easier to look up. But yeah, they have a custom scripting language that they have like made themselves too, which I'm familiar with. So I feel like my chances of getting in there is pretty big. Kinda. So that's also another thing. I could I wanna, yeah, no, haste, not haste. Yeah. Yeah, it would be pretty neat. Another route that I could potentially go as well is going QA and then like work my way from there, but I think I'm gonna try and go for the school route if I'm able to, you know. Especially since I can do the school stuff with a friend, that like the academic stuff that I have to do first. I can do that with a friend, which is gonna make it significantly easier to get through. Okay, Pumpkin. I hope to see you again soon too. Bye. But yeah, no, that would be pretty cool. But I know like my chances of getting in Sweden is pretty big, especially if I've speedrun the game, right? Which is why I'm like also like, ooh, maybe you know, I'd be able to get in because I have experience with like how It Takes Two works, so that might like help in that sense.
我是 BT7274，毒蛇已解决。
收到，登上天龙星并守护圣柜，我们会准备好移动。
库珀，我要扔了。
库珀，
正在调整风阻，计算中。
That's also another thing. I wanna like make sure I work on some It Takes Two modding things too, because I wanna make some custom levels for It Takes Two. I just need to actually fix the editor and stuff, because I had it almost working and then I messed something up, so I have to like rebuild everything, and I've been too lazy to do that.
这艘船正高速下坠，靠我们了，库珀。正接近圣柜的遏制单位。遏制单位大到无法携带，我们必须随机应变。我无法到达圣柜，库珀，我需要你的帮忙。
Yeah, I will help you, buddy.
快点，赶快离舰，时间不多了。这边，库珀。
你在做什么？
协议3，
把圣柜弄出去！
不行，我们被困住了。我不会失去另一位体育的。准备撞击。
Damn, I'm saving a lot of time back. I'm 20 seconds left. Damn.
布里斯克，你的问题不关我的事。你依照合约运送圣柜之后 ，IMC 就会转账给你。准备好我要的钱，我就会把你珍贵的货物带来，胆小鬼。哎，泰坦。
Yeah.
快打开舱门，给我所要的东西。
My my PB is still far off, right? My PB was like a 128 or something. But we're getting there. The more practice I do, the better it's gonna be.
盯着大英雄，你有我的东西，我要你把它还给我，快点，叫你的泰坦打开。
打开他的话匣子吗？
哎，那么想当英雄吗？我靠，这份合约赚了不少钱，我的朋友。
Some of these songs are just such a vibe. It's like, hell yeah.
我就让你脑袋开花。
铁域陷入危机，视觉系统达到临界，无法利用视觉找到铁域。
啊，让他站好。
No, you're a vibe, try.
看到他了没？在这里，在这里，看到他了没？
功能受严重冲击伤害影响。
我知道这里面还有些东西能
Oh yeah, also, in 2 weeks, me and Glint are doing a little... It's not an official 12-hour challenge, like it's not like by the people that do the 12-hour speedrun challenge stuff, but we're having like our own little 12-hour challenge for Hollow Knight, any percent, no major glitches. In like 2 weeks-ish. I'm gonna post an announcement about that too. So me and Glint are gonna be doing it. I have convinced Coconut to join us. Bites is most likely joining as well, and then I think there was like a few others. And I think that's gonna be cool. Because it's one of those runs that I've been wanting to learn for a long time. I just haven't, you know, been like, do it now, right? So, yeah, it's a great game. So actually, here. Oh, it's being chroma keyed out. That's funny. I'm see-through, chat. I'm see-through. That's so cool. Yeah. It's really good. I have to fix up some... It's a bit splotchy here. Missing some colors. Because I was very unfortunate with some of the healing in it. But, you know, that's just how it is sometimes, so... The tat butt. I wanna get one for Hornet as well after that game releases. So. Let's go, Crisis! Hell yeah! Tattoos are so fun. I want to be covered. I want to be covered so bad. I wanna. Do you know the tall necks from Horizon? The Horizon games? Yeah, I want to get the tattoo of one of them, like a super detailed mechanical type tattoo, but there's no one in my area that does anything like that. But I really want to get one like that. No idea where on my body. I just really want one. Yeah, something about getting a pet popper and tattoos. Ooh, that's cute. Something about streaming Titanfall again, like this, and not feeling like, I don't know, forced to play it almost. It's like bringing me back to like 2020 when I was still unemployed, getting into streaming properly. Help me back, tied me up inside. Change my life, cause I need to stay the same.
我是罗特角的兰德个人上尉，斯托克顿重弹要坠毁了。布里格斯指挥官，这是6次的盖斯，我们是不是来晚了？盖斯，你来的正好。马耳他还剩多少弹药？库珀，我们在前方追踪布里
他们
Oh
手
my
上，
god.
继续前进。我们已经担下很多事，别担心，库珀，我们罩你。
我们必须全力阻止 IMC 启动折叠
Fuck
时
you.
空武器。如果失败，反抗军的哈莫尼星将会被摧毁。
瞄准系统启动。IM 准备人员注意，我是马德将军，佣兵已将圣柜送达，准备折叠时空武器。
开启折叠时空武器能源系统，启动瞄准反馈。
目的地设成反抗军星球哈莫尼。
瞄准系统启动，哈莫尼星，坐标264。
Yeah, you have no idea, Try, how tempting it is to just quit. Quit my job and go back on unemployment. The downside is that I have to wait 4 months before I begin receiving my unemployment benefits.
我有说过要抢救吗？这个免费奉送。
当我看着你，就想看到一大笔钱呐！这是第1阶段，我必须说，这比鱼亮头，该等他了。时空武器程序通过第2阶段，坐标已锁定，自由港系统，行星用者哈莫。
开看到底。
好了，再来吧。就是不认识，对吧？时间时空武器通过阶段3，计算空间折叠投入中。哎，你没那么容易承认。我为了庆祝你，国在启动前把圣会带走。时空武器准备完毕，环轮动力达97%。But I have to be fired till before I can get unemployment. Yeah.
我们会掩护你，之后就靠你了。
No, I get that. That's why, like, if I resign, if I quit, I have to wait 4 months until I begin receiving unemployment, right? But if I was let go, and the reason wasn't my fault, then I would get unemployment immediately. But I can't just walk up to my boss and be like, "Hey, can you fire me, but make it seem like you didn't need me or something, but not that it was my fault, so I could get unemployment." You know, I can't just do that.
你今天走运来了。我的分析是投掷是唯一的办法。我能够将扔过去，扔过去。
No, I got a raise this year actually, but that's standard. Like, you always go up a bit every year. Usually it's minimal. It's not that much. It's usually just like
我的自动导航系统断线了。那个射出装配室，我们非得合作。
I don't know what even that would be.
我们非得合作才行。我们非得合作才行。
$0.1 usually a year, but this time I went up from like 171 Norwegian crowns per hour to like 186. So that's like $1.50 raise.
我们已炸毁它。我正传送运输船汇合坐标给你。
收到坐标，我们会过去。那你怎么过去？
相信我，我计算过了，我计算过。
最好是这样。我们在路上了，祝你们好运了。布里格斯，完毕。
别担心，雨婷，我就在这儿。
收到，
Dude. I didn't realize until now that I got pre-charge.
相信我。
What?
库珀，我们刚失去 BT 的讯号，只差一点。库珀，我在你的抬头显示上标好坐标，撤离点可能在空中，这边没有可着陆的地方。
而且如果我飞越这片狼藉，你最好准时出现在那里。
铁玉，快走！我在追踪你，继续前进。
Nice. No PB, but I somehow beat my last run after being 3 minutes behind. So imagine I didn't fuck up Abyss 2 that bad. Then, like, if I had done Abyss 2 as should have been done, it would have been 4 minutes faster than this, so. Nice. It's getting there. It's getting back there. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Yeah, so here are some of the game themes, right, that I'm thinking about. And these are all just pulled from like game jams and stuff. So what I'm thinking that we're gonna be doing, either gonna just like randomly pick one off the list or randomly pick a few and then have chat vote. And I think this is gonna be nice to like get an idea, right? You know, your life is currency. If you get that, it kind of like, you know, gets the ideas turning. Or out of control, summoning, 3 rules, you're already dead. You know, tons of like stuff that like that. 2 worlds, unusual magic. Well, Egyptian vibes. Yeah, this is Hades music. So that's my idea there. And then we're gonna like make a concept, figure out a core mechanic and stuff on Saturday, and then not sure if I'm gonna jump straight into it or not. Probably just do the concepting on Saturday, and then like we jump into it the next weekend. Probably. Yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. I think if I do it on Saturdays, that's gonna be like the best time because I feel like I'll always be able to do it on Saturdays, right? Ooh, Crisis, that's cool. Kind of creepy, but cool. You get to crunch down every Saturday. Yeah. So I think if I can make that like a routine so that like every Saturday I come back and I kind of do it. I at least do it once a week, right? To make progress on it. And the idea then is to go through everything that needs to be done in a game, right? So even like outside of just the gameplay, you know, you have to think about like the main menu, maybe an options menu. I want to make sure that whatever I make is speedrunner friendly, right? So I want to include an in-game timer, stuff like that. Even if, you know, people aren't necessarily going to be running it, it's just I think if I take the effort to learn that like straight away, that's going to make it easier and would make it so that like whenever I develop something down the line, it's something I already have in mind, right? So it's just kind of like easy to do it. So if there's like an in-game timer, maybe I guess a speedrun class for like if people wanted to make an auto splitter or something, just, you know, easy things like that. Wow, I have 5 subscribers already. Oh my god. Should maybe not expose people's names. Who would have thought, right? I'll just post it there again. Also, new logo that I'm thinking about maybe using. Listen to this one again. new logo. I think it's cute because it resembles a cat, and then also it reads Lem. Not that it's like super big on a screen. I can see if I can find it in my files somewhere here. Some is the better. Done touches. Yeah, here. Yeah. Cat, with just one eye, I guess. And L E M. Yeah. Anything else that I want to say then? I feel like I've just been like rambling about like stuff and things, but I'm having a really good time. Mm, and I feel like it's your stream. That's true. It is my stream. Yeah, no, I'm just like super excited because it's been like I I worked at so okay, my path so far in life, right? I finished school in 2014. I was an apprentice for 2 years until 2016 as like in fashion technology. I won the Norwegian Championship in fashion technology. I participated in the World Championship. But at the end of all of that, I was so like figured out that no, this isn't for me. This is not something that I want to do. And then, I'd also gotten into a relationship at that point, which wasn't the best for me because it was like we ended up becoming like a package deal, So wherever I went, like my ex would come with me, and I never had like time for myself, I guess. So I definitely learned a lot about myself those years, right? And also I just didn't know what I wanted to do anymore because that was my plan from the beginning. I was so set. I wanted to work like in fashion or design clothes and stuff. That was like my goal. And then once it turned out to me that, oh, that's not what I want to do, it was like, oh, then what do I do? So it's just been like a cruising mode, where you just kind of like live life and you're like, huh, I don't know what to do. And then yeah, after going to TwitchCon this year, it like, and meeting so many cool people like in the game dev industry and stuff like that, it was just like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do. Because before that, I already like thought about like wanting to get into it, and I've been like dabbling a bit. I learned more about coding, got into doing that because of auto splitters and stuff. And that was just something I really enjoyed. Like problem solving is something that I really, really enjoy doing. And I feel like I'm pretty good at problem solving as well at this point. And coding is pretty much just that, solving problems, figuring out like how to do it and things. So yeah, yeah. It's just that like sometimes you sit here and you think about like the choices that you made and stuff, because there was some point that I wanted to go back to school and like do the stuff that I'm going to do now, but my ex like said no, and I listened to him. So it wasn't like straight up like that, but yeah, it was basically no, like you shouldn't do that, blah blah blah. Because that means I would have to take up a student loan and stuff, but student loans in Norway are very like chill, because it's like there is no interest on them until like so and so many years after you finished it, and then you don't have to pay it back until so and so many years after, and even then you only have to pay it back as long as you're in a job. If you're unemployed or you don't earn enough, then you don't have to pay it back right now. And it just kind of like, it's a very chill loan to have. So I do wish I did that back then, because then I could just go straight into that game dev school now. But then, you know, it's like, it's in the past. It's nothing that I can change, right? So if I do it now, even if it's academics, I don't want to do academics, but if it's what I need to do what I want to do, then, you know, I'll do it. Also had the opportunity to get into doing a bit of QA this year through GBTN, the Global Beta Testing Network. It's not like a lot. I didn't do too much, but I did a bit. So I have signed some non-disclosure agreements, so that I can't talk about, you know, because NDAs. But I do have some experience there now, which also like makes me think that even if I didn't go to the school, that's definitely a path that I can take. Just go straight into QA and work my way from there. But I think I'll definitely do the school route, because then also I don't have to think about like working. You know, I can kind of just like live on the student loan for what would be the next 3 years, because it would be from this autumn and until spring. I would do the academic stuff, finish that, and then it's 2 years of game dev, and then, you know, work after that. Yeah, no, I've been definitely like digging, trying, and I'm been trying to like figure out every single different like option that I have, like what paths I can take, trying to weigh pros and cons. And it's just like, realistically, who knows what's gonna happen, right? So I'm just like, okay, I might as well just do the school route then, because then at least I have that done, and I have something I can point back to, like that's like definite, like, here, this is the experience I have. And the game dev school I want to go to is pretty good too. Let me find it actually. He sent it to me in DMs. Yeah, so Oliver suggested Future Games in Sweden. So that's the one I want to go to. He suggested a few others as well, but I think Future Games is what I'd try and go for. But I'll definitely apply to like all three that he suggested. It was Future Games, Game Assembly, and Playground Squad. And they're all in Sweden. So it's not too far away. And it turns out as well, as a Norwegian citizen, going to school in Sweden is easy. First of all, it turns out that for all Nordic citizens, I don't have to pay anything for the school itself. I just need to, you know, meet the requirements and get in. Because basically, for Future Games at least, that's the one I looked into the most. You had to like qualify and like, there are a bunch of qualifications that you need to hit, or requirements, and then you had to like show off a game project, which is also why I want to, you know, actually like get into doing it now and get some projects out of the way, like begin small and build my way up, so that I at least have different experience and that I can point to that. So that gives me basically a whole year to work on that and like teach myself things and like mess with things and get in that way. Yeah. I feel like I've talked so much right now. I'm like, oh. Also, why the heck are you not a VIP in my channel, Crisis? Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. But you're VIP now, so you have the diamond badge. Yeah, I think, because even I don't 100% know what I want to do within the game dev industry. I just know that I want to work with games. And as long as I get in somewhere, I can kind of like work my way from place to place too. If I do the school route, then I have that as like basis. Basically it's for game design specifically, is the school though. but then, you know, I feel like game design kind of touches on a lot of the different things. Basically like making a game from start to finish, right? So it would give me something to work with and then kind of go from there. Like, I mean, maybe it turns out that I really enjoy doing QA. And then, you know, I can just do that. Or maybe I really end up enjoying game design, or maybe I want to go more into just doing a straight up coding. Who knows? But as long as I take the steps to like get there now, and get into that, so that in 2024 I'll get into the school. I'll be done with school in 2026. Yeah. I will be 30 years old when I'm done with school then. But yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. It's one of my big goals, and I really want to do it. So I also I actually posted this in Alice's Discord, because she has like a 2023 goals channel, and I posted some stuff there. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so my goals that I wrote down were move out and work on my life goals. Participate in my first game jam, learn and do more speedruns, travel to SGDQ and meet Alice. So hopefully I'll be able to go to SGDQ this summer. That would be really cool. I hope that we get to know the dates and locations soon-ish, so I can actually begin planning that properly. Whereas Kiss Try, hold on, let me edit it and add that in. Yeah. Let's go, Crisis. That would be so cool. Yeah, no, I hope I really get to go. It's trying to get the money to do it, right? I am gonna be yeah, you do. I am gonna be fundraising it, I think. Gonna be like trying to push for it a lot with streams. I'm gonna be setting that up more, I think, when I know the dates and location, because then I can actually figure out prices and stuff, right? So hopefully it's not like a super delayed announcement. I'm assuming it's gonna be in Minnesota again. Yeah. It's just so funny, Try. We're gonna fly past each other. So, what state did you live in again, Crisis? Yeah, it was Pennsylvania. Okay. If you were to go to SGDQ, would you be driving, or would you be taking, would you be flying, or like what do you think you would be doing there? Plane, yeah. Because I think something called North Atlantic Airways that has really cheap tickets, right, to New York. So I don't know. I'll just put some random dates in right now. Yeah, I know that makes sense. Yeah, because you see, depending on the dates, right, I can get it like as cheap as $246 one way. 200. Right, so that's $500 right here. Then I'd have to I have to choose, yeah. So this one, Right, and then there's like economic classic. I would definitely have a carry-on. So it would probably have to be this one. So that's 300. Yeah. So it's not like super bad to get to New York. And I'm assuming from New York I can probably get to like Minneapolis, like no big deal. I hope. I don't know. Something I'd have to figure out more. $300. One way. I mean, it's pretty cheap. It's decent prices. What did I pay to go to TwitchCon? I don't fully remember. Let me see. So I had to take a 3-hour flight or drive for 18 hours. Yeah. Oh, but how much did I pay for these? Here, the receipt. Yeah, I paid like $400 to travel to Amsterdam and back. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that would be the way I'd go is probably to fly from Oslo to New York because I think that's the cheapest option I'm gonna get because it's a direct flight from Oslo to New York, and then go from New York to wherever I need to. I'm assuming there would probably be like a direct flight or something from New York to Minneapolis, but I don't know. Where would you fly from, Crisis? From Philadelphia. What if I flew to New York? Went down to Philadelphia, and then we flew together to SGDQ. Yeah, I mean, let's go. I don't know how like public transport is from New York to Philadelphia, but looking on the map, it doesn't look like it'd be too bad. Driving will be shit. You wouldn't have to drive. Um, Um, yeah. Yeah, no, I could take... I don't know. As far as I can tell, it seems like I can take a train from New York to Philadelphia. So, I mean, I could do that. Fly into New York, take the train to Philadelphia, and then fly together from there. And then... Hell yeah. That would be really cool. Oh. Yeah, so I hope we get to know the dates like soonish so I can actually like properly plan for that. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Hell yeah, sounds good. No, that would be really fun. Yeah, because like if I'm going to the US, I want to meet as many people as I can, like realistically speaking. And then after my general loose-ish plan, right, is to then fly from Oslo to New York. Assuming things work out with you and stuff, I'd go down to Philadelphia, fly from there together with you up to Minnesota, assuming that's where it's gonna be. Stay at SGDQ. Then after SGDQ is over, I would go to Vegas and meet Alice, stay with her for a week probably, and then fly back home. I think would be my general plan-ish. Yeah. Yeah, I mean if I'm in the US, you know, at that point like I kind of feel like I have to, right? So that's my general plan. For then because then I know Glint said he's probably going to go to SGDQ as well. Meeting up with the Canadians. And I think Glint would join me to Las Vegas as well and meet Alice again because Glint's already met Alice. So yeah, hopefully all of that works out. Hopefully, would be really cool. Anyway, I have to go to bed. So I've had a really good time though. Had a really good time derusting, getting better. Getting better. Definitely need to figure out the Abyss 2 stuff, like figure out the exact lineup there. But yeah, no, it's getting way better already, so which I'm proud of. I'm proud of that. But improving way faster than I thought it would. And I want to get to like a level of consistency so that I'm able to like participate in Mach 3 March and feel like I have a kind of good, like decent chance of getting up there, you know? Yeah, let's just raid Alice. She's pulling her hair up, which means it's getting serious. So this is the raid message. yeah, I'll post some stuff in the Discord regarding the game dev stuff on Saturday and the Hollow Knight challenge in 2 weeks. Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say. It's been a good stream. It's been a good stream. It was kind of fun way to start it though, because I was just gonna record some stuff to check something, and then it turns out I clicked the start streaming button. So, you know, it's just how it is. Absolutely a butt stream. Butt spot your butt. Butt spot is great. Anyway, I will see y'all later. Bye.